In the midst of an ordinary day, Lance Alexander Sr. found himself in an extraordinary situation. As he sat in his car, humming along to the radio, completely engrossed in the rhythm, an unexpected guest slid into the passenger seat. The stranger's sudden presence caught Lance off guard, causing him to sputter, "What are you doing in my car?" The stranger, with an icy gaze, uttered a single word, "Drive." But Lance, a man of wit and humor, merely chuckled and replied, "I'm waiting for my son, hit the road, Jack." The stranger, however, was far from amused and brandished a gun, turning the situation from peculiar to perilous. Lance, still unfazed, looked at the stranger and warned, "You don't want to do this, mate." The stranger, now intrigued by Lance's fearless attitude, retorted, "Do you think you're a magician?" Lance, with a dark smile creeping onto his face, responded, "I'm worse." The car roared to life, and with a swift turn of the wheel they were speeding off, leaving Lance's son behind, who watched his father's car disappear into the distance, shrugged, and vanished into thin air. Inside the car, the stranger was now terrified, realizing he might have picked the wrong vehicle to hijack. But Lance, with a devil-may-care attitude, was enjoying the ride, speeding recklessly and swerving across the road. The stranger, desperate to escape, pleaded, "Let me out of here, I'll not hurt you if you let me go," but Lance, with a tone of mock hurt, responded, "You said you wanted me to drive," and locked the doors, trapping the stranger within. The stranger, now horrified, accused, "This is kidnapping!" To which Lance retorted sternly, "You should have thought of that before you kidnapped me." The stranger, now understanding the gravity of the situation, exclaimed, "You're a madman!" Lance, without missing a beat, replied truthfully, "I've been called that before." In the face of danger, Lance revealed a side of himself that was far from ordinary. And as they continued their wild ride, the stranger was left to ponder what he had gotten himself into. As the car sped away, Lance's true nature started to unravel. With a devilish smile, he locked the car doors, a clear indication that they were in for a wild ride. The carjacker, who had initially been the one instilling fear, was now the one gripped by it. Lance's driving was anything but ordinary. He zigzagged across the road, flirted with the speed limits, and took dangerous turns without a second thought. To anyone watching, it was clear this man had a death wish. But to the carjacker, it was a terrifying realization that he had picked the wrong car, the wrong man. His pleas for mercy fell on deaf ears. "You wanted me to drive?" Lance responded, his tone mockingly hurt. The carjacker's fear escalated to sheer horror as he realized he was now the one being kidnapped. Lance was unmoved by his predicament. "You should have thought of that before you kidnapped me," he retorted sternly. The carjacker's accusations of madness were met with an indifferent shrug. "I've been called that before," Lance admitted, his eyes never leaving the road. A sudden stop for a duck family to cross the road left the carjacker confused. "Why bother the innocents?" Lance said, as if reading his mind. The drive continued in a bizarre mix of terror and confusion. Every turn, every speed bump, every reckless maneuver served to unravel Lance's true nature. He was not just a man with a death wish. He was a man with a secret, a man with power, a man who could read minds. As they drove on, the carjacker's pleas for release grew more desperate, his fear more palpable. But Lance was unmoved. He had a plan, a destination in mind, and as he turned the steering wheel sharply towards a police station, the carjacker's fear turned into absolute terror. He had no idea what was coming, but he knew it wasn't good. A dangerous drive was turning into a bizarre kidnapping, with Lance at the helm. In a twist of fate, the carjacker found himself at the mercy of his own victim. And so, the tables turned dramatically. Lance, with a devilish grin on his face, directed his car towards the one place that no carjacker would ever want to be, the police station. The carjacker's eyes widened with terror as he saw the looming structure ahead, his desperate plea for freedom now replaced with a scream of pure, unadulterated fear. Inside the police station, two officers were enjoying a casual chat over lunch. Suddenly they were startled by a blood-curdling scream echoing from outside. They exchanged worried glances, unsure of what was happening. Was it just some prankster having a laugh, or was there more to it? Meanwhile, Lance, with a mad gleam in his eyes, was hurtling towards the station. The carjacker was now a picture of abject terror, his earlier bravado now nothing but a distant memory. He closed his eyes, bracing for the inevitable crash. And then, it happened. With a deafening crash, the car burst into the police station, causing papers to fly and officers to scramble. The commanding officer emerging from his office froze at the sight of the car inside the station. "What is this car doing in here?" he bellowed, his eyes wide with disbelief. His gaze fell on the two occupants of the car and his face paled. "Arrest him now!" he pointed at Lance. But the doors of the car were locked. One officer fumbled with the handle, but to no avail. "Allow me!" Lance's voice cut through the chaos. And with that, he teleported the car away, leaving behind two empty desk chairs. The carjacker had passed out from fear, and Lance sat there, calm and composed, as if this were just another day at the office. As the car crashed into the police station, the lines between victim and perpetrator blurred. But in this twisted tale, who was the real victim and who was the perpetrator? That was a question only time would tell. In the heart of chaos, Lance revealed his true identity. The stage was set, the actors were in place. Lance, the man of the hour, had an air of mystery about him, a sparkle in his eyes that danced to a rhythm all its own. The policemen, baffled by the unexpected arrival of a car in their station, were struggling to open the doors, their faces a mix of confusion and shock. Suddenly Lance, with a smirk playing on his lips, said, "Allow me!" In a blink, he and the carjacker were no longer in the car. Instead, they were seated comfortably in the station, the car nowhere in sight. The carjacker, unable to comprehend the sudden shift, fainted, his body slumped in the chair. Lance, however, sat calmly, a small smile playing on his lips. The officer in charge, a stern man with years of service under his belt, recognized him instantly. His eyes widened, and he pointed a shaky finger at Lance. "What is the meaning of this, enchanter?" he demanded. The room fell silent. The name echoed through the station, hanging heavy in the air. The Enchanter. Lance's alter ego, known and revered by many. A hero in the light of day, a beacon of hope to those who knew him. Yet there was more than what met the eye. A secret identity hidden under the cloak of darkness. A character known only to a few, the Necromancer. The police were unaware of this duality, only recognizing the hero, the Enchanter. As the reality of the situation began to sink in, the police station was filled with a sense of awe and disbelief. The carjacker's plan had not only failed, but it had also backfired spectacularly. He had chosen the wrong car, the wrong victim. His misfortune had led him straight into the arms of a man of dual identities, a hero and a villain wrapped into one. The carjacker's plan had backfired spectacularly, bringing him face to face with a man of dual identities. Lance wasn't just a regular man, he was a man of many faces. As the dust settled in the police station, the commanding officer, his face a mixture of confusion and disbelief, demanded, "What is the meaning of this, Enchanter?" For those who knew him in the light of day, Lance was the Enchanter, a hero who used his magical abilities to protect and serve. His reputation was one of valor and integrity, a beacon of hope in a world often shrouded in darkness. He was a magician, yes, but his magic was used for good, or so they believed. The officer in charge, a gruff man with a stern demeanor, was clearly taken aback by Lance's sudden appearance. Yet he seemed to trust Lance, or rather, the Enchanter. This was a man who had saved countless lives, a man who had always been on the side of justice. But Lance held a secret, a dark and dangerous secret that could shatter the trust placed in him by the police and the public. Behind the facade of the charming and heroic Enchanter lay another identity, one that lurked in the shadows. He was also the Necromancer, a secret assassin whose deeds were far from heroic. "Enchanter, we need an explanation," the officer demanded, his voice echoing in the silent station. Lance, with a sly smile, replied, "Isn't it obvious, officer? I've just delivered you a criminal." The officer, not fully understanding, could only stare at Lance or the Enchanter or the Necromancer. Whoever he was, he had just turned the tables once again. The carjacker, now awake, looked around in panic. He had been captured not by the police, but by the very man he had tried to rob. He had been outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and outplayed, and all this while, he had no idea he was dealing with not one, but two formidable identities. As the day unfolded, the true extent of Lance's dual identities had only just begun to surface. His story, the tale of the Enchanter and the Necromancer, was far from over. It was a tale of duality, of light and darkness, and of the blurred lines between hero and villain. And it was a tale that was just beginning to be told.